We are doing all this project for the safety of the pyramid, and we're not hurting anyone.
So you're going to excavate this way in order to clear out this sand and presumably some things behind
Exactly. Look what's happened to the Sphinx pyramid. Look at these ugly houses. Look at the sound and light buildings. We need to demolish all of this and put everything under the ground.
So you're actually going to demolish buildings?
Yeah.
The government will buy them, presumably?
No, this belongs to us. This is sound and light.
Okay.
If you do that, you need to do the archaeology first. There was a harbor in this area. You need to do the archaeology first. You need to do the archaeology first. You need to do the archaeology first. There was a harbor in this area.
All right, hello, welcome everyone. My name is Trevor Grossi, and this is the Secret Underworld of Giza Part 7. I've got Bill Brown back here today with me to talk about some of the new exciting things that are coming out from the Giza Plateau and new research we've pulled up over the past year. So, welcome back, Bill. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be back again. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm starting here with this slide from where we left off in part 3 when we were talking about this temple complex that you brought forward, this model of it, which we presented in part 3. Just to remember what we were looking at last with you, this was one of the images showing some of these tunnels that were coming into the plateau. And before we get into some of this new research, I just wanted to go through some of this with you, showing some of these other tunnels that were coming in from the east. That we were talking about how this one from this little temple has a tunnel that looks like it goes right up to this big void. And this was a separate one from a different location nearby. One of the temples underground here connecting to the Great Pyramid. One of them was coming from further down south, but all in this village to the east that's been demolished. And today we want to talk more about the stable property over here and how that connects into all this. But then in parts 5 and 6, a couple of the episodes I did without you, I showed a lot more evidence for these tunnels coming off the Sphinx that go to all 3 pyramids. So now, today, I think we're going to get into the most exciting stuff about how we can get to the Sphinx tunnels from the village over here. So these are some establishing shots. But since I haven't been able to talk with you since we got these images, the Coffer Project, I was hoping we can go through some of the correlations between what the Coffer Project found with their SAR scans and what you had found back in 2006 with Dr. Abbas and the NRIAG, as well as the University of Wrocław. So for starters, can you tell us a little introduction back to this quick, just to remind everyone how what you had done back in 2006 and describe these are the 9 locations?
Yeah, this
you worked
map
on?
that shows the different 9 locations I did in February of 2006. They were coordinated with the University of Warsaw that I was working with and Dr. Abbas at the time. This is kind of like the blue areas show, and then
Mhm.
the GPR scans that were later analyzed. And in this picture, we see the location and the GPR scan image.
Basically, every single one of these 9 locations where you chose to scan, there was anomalies in basically every single one. This was scan location number 1, where you found this major square, rectangular anomaly going straight under the pyramid here. So
Yeah,
I think,
well, that anomaly is the exact location where the Japanese solar boat is.
mhm,
And we had
yeah,
found that in 2006 before the Japanese even showed up to do the work for the
mhm.
solar boat number 2.
And yeah, Richard was saying he thought that there was a tunnel from that pit, which is why it's been sealed up and you can't really see down into it anymore. But with this scan, we can clearly see there's something going under the pyramid right around here. So the question in my mind is, does that connect to this lower ramp that the Coffer Project have showed inside the Great Pyramid? That could be connection number 1.
Yeah, there's a correlation to it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Now, coming over to the Coffer Pyramid, this is, of course, the first one where they showed these tubes coming down, these large circular wells, they call them, that are hollow. But at the Coffer Project, we've got some more of these images that really correlate to some of the internal structures they showed. So this was one of the images from Adam Sienkiewicz and the University of Wrocław. That same scan, if we just put this on top, you had showed that these 2 tunnels coming out from these, what do they call these? Jed structures, they call them, because they're like the top of a jed pillar, kind of look like the relieving chambers of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. And these tunnels coming out from them seem to be shown in this one scan you did across the entire base edge here.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, you can see that in this
Yeah.
one.
It's a very interesting correlation, coincidence, as we would call it.
Yeah, I mean, because you can, clearly they weren't showing anything outside the pyramid at this point, but it seems like these tunnels are just coming straight out as if they're both coming out towards the temple here and then connecting to this tunnel that we know is underneath the causeway. So here's another one, and this one was from the NRIAG, where you again saw both of these anomalies. Especially this one on the right is very, very clear. Something's there. I think this one is probably the best, which is also right in front of this one, if that's correct, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been showing that for years, that there's definitely something there. And I've met with some people. We've actually stood on the ground in that location, and we can actually feel like there is something definitely on the ground there. And some new
Hmm.
information has just come out now uh, about the Holy of Holies, et cetera, in that general area. So yeah, there has to be something there.
Yeah. So, yeah, all 3 of these are basically showing that a little closer up. And in the report from Dr. Abbas, we also had some of these illustrations where he actually showed like the tunnel going underneath the pyramid. This one was really interesting, I think, because he was showing that it looked like it had these hard walls and also suggested that these might be filled with conductive materials, which is really interesting. I don't know what that means, conductive materials. It could mean there's some kind of energy running through there somehow. But yeah, anyway, this is especially important because if we do get under here and we can access these tunnels, it would seem that we're going to be able to access all these things underneath it. So here's that meme you made to show a few of those connections earlier on. Here you can see both of these together in this one. We also remember in part 1 you had talked about scan location number 4, we call it, where there was this anomaly that knocked everything offline and basically took out all the equipment you were using, and everyone had to shut down for the day and start over basically the next day.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's there's something energetically definitely there being picked up by the newsstand afterwards.
Yeah. So something very interesting right kind of under the temple or where it connects to the causeway.
Yes,
Okay, so that's another important piece of the puzzle. And then just quick, I wanted to show what you had said by these are some of the anomalies you had picked up off the GPR scans, and one of them, this one T3 right here, seems to line up very well with what the Coffer project showed next to theirs.
yes,
This one's
and that's next to the tomb of Osiris, and not the tomb of Osiris.
right. So this is the tomb of Osiris here, where you see the three
Exactly.
coming
Right.
down.
Yeah.
This one
Yeah.
is just to the west.
I showed all this stuff back in 2009.
Mm. Well,
When I
now
was
we've got
doing,
the
yeah,
SAR data to back it up because this is the Osiris shaft on their image. So this
right.
one is also just to the west.
Yeah. So they did pick up the rooms that I'm showing in my design. Yeah.
Hmm. Here's another one to show that a little clearer. So yeah, T3 anomaly could be here. And you reported all these in your book, Giza Report 2008 as well. Showed
Right.
all this stuff. So yeah, that's just a few of the correlations between these few scans that had been done back then and what's going on now with the SAR. So been wanting to cover that with you for
Right.
months. Actually, it's almost a year since they came out with that or let me come out with it. So yeah, I just wanted to cover all that quickly before we get into this new stuff that's very exciting to announce regarding the
Yeah.
stable.
But that was my first book that I published back in 2009. And I'm getting ready to come out with another book that will cover all of this later.
Awesome. Yeah, we know that the Coffer Project are saying they're going to be wrapped up with Giza by the summer and they'll have their final scans to show and their final reports basically. So we'll have even more then, hopefully. But at this point, yeah, we have some really exciting news about the stable project, the stable that's located about over here, which is the main project you've kind of been focused on for years and years and years, trying to get an excavation to happen or scanning to happen there. So this is one of the images that shows potentially what it could have looked like back in the day. This is what we've called the Khufu Palace. This is around where that other temple is. And here's another map just to lay some of that out. That palace is probably in the area that's still under all these houses. But this is the stable right here, which is in the section of the village that's already been destroyed. Mostly in 2021, all of that got destroyed. But here's another establishing shot I got last trip, which just is a good visual to see. This is the stable location. There's the Sphinx peeking out, and it's basically right over the wall from the Sphinx. It's a good shot to see basically the whole area that's been demolished. These were all houses just a few years ago in 2021. Everything got destroyed, and this clump of trees is all that remains basically of the stable. But as you told us in episode 2, actually, when you went deep on this, we do know that there are these structures below it, and there are tunnels. I think one heading kind of off this way towards the palace, and then two heading underneath the wall towards the Sphinx area or towards the cave cleanup area behind there.
And
Right.
one going directly west to underneath the concrete wall where the cave cleanup took place in 2011.
Yeah. Okay, so that's right around here where you cleaned
Right.
up all that stuff. And we know that you found a whole bunch of doors here, entrances into the underground. And you've been saying you think this is really close to the area of the records, the record halls and
Yeah.
stuff, as
Yeah,
Casey's
that's actually
description.
we feel they talk about that the area of the second Sphinx, but
Yeah.
I call it the area of the underground hall of records.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, some people suggest there's a second Sphinx here that was, one of two flanking the causeway as you walk in, even though this is a modern road. But a lot of people think this is like a mound kind of here, and that there might have been another Sphinx on top of it at one point. And of course, you got like a dozen doors right here in this cliffside too, going in where we know there's just a bunch of shafts going down. So you did give me back when we first met this image, which was pretty
Yeah,
close to what we were thinking is like the records are somewhere over here in this cave cleanup area that's right
yeah,
next to this stable and all the stuff on the outside of the wall.
right. And we've been able to prove an underground tunnel there as shown here. So I feel like this is pretty accurate.
Yeah. Well, I think today we're going to see that you're pretty close here
Right.
to, not that we know exactly, but pretty close to what the Edgar Cayce Foundation themselves believed.
Yeah, that was just an
So,
early conceptual plan concept.
yeah. And people might not know about the Pyramid of Records. That's what we're going to really focus on right now is Edgar Cayce mentioned a few times he was talking about the tomb of records, the halls of records, chambers and different things. But there's a few times he literally said a pyramid of records as if it was an unknown pyramid buried. So, for instance, in 2390-7, he's asked about these records that are within the Great Pyramid, and he says, no, not the Great Pyramid. He said they're the records in the Pyramid of Records, not the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid was the initiating building. The records are in the temple or pyramids of records of the entity. To be sure, these will be part of the experience sometime when these are unfolded. So he talked about the Pyramid of Records coming forward at some point too, being discovered. This one, 1486-1, the first to set the records that are yet to be discovered or yet to be had of those activities in the Atlantean land, and for the preservation of the data that has yet to be found from the chambers of the way between the Sphinx and the Pyramid of Records. So he's also talking about a direct tunnel connection from the Sphinx to this Pyramid of Records and saying that there are other things along that tunnel. And this is one more where he said, where are those records or tablets made of the Egyptian experience I might study? He answers, in the tomb of records as indicated, for the entity's tomb was then a part of the Hall of Records, which has not yet been uncovered. This, by the way, we got into deep in part two as well, which was called the Tomb of Records, or potentially what that tomb could be. It lies between or along the entrance from the Sphinx to the temple or the pyramid, in a pyramid, of course, of its own. So then it says, through what channels the Association for Research and Enlightenment may the entity gain the most? He says, as it begins its further preparation and activity, seek through those channels for guidance as it is felt that it is needed, or begin with the interpreting of the tablets. For remember, there are 32 of these plates. So this is where he's talking specifically about 32 plates that are part of the records that are in this chamber. This is an extract from one of the Edgar Cayce publications, but it's a really important quote here. He says, with the storehouse or record house pyramids where the records are still to be uncovered, there's a chamber or passage from the right forepaw of the Sphinx to this entrance of the record chamber or record tomb. This may not be entered without an understanding, for those that were left as guards may not be passed until after a period of their regeneration in the mount or the fifth root race begins. So this is very important that he says straight up from the right paw to the entrance of this record chamber. And today, yeah, very excited to announce that we have some of these images that came from the Edgar Cayce archives that actually show some of their understandings of at least how this pyramid could be laid out and connected to the Sphinx. So, I think first of all, I have to thank our friend Laura Hoff, who's been helping with this research. She works at the ARE Library. That's the Association for Research and Enlightenment. For those who don't know, that's the Edgar Cayce Foundation in Virginia Beach. And she's been looking into a lot of the Hall of Records stuff and digging through the archives for documents about it. And last year she came and showed me this image that I could already basically overlay this in my mind with the satellite image and see that it was showing the Pyramid of Records basically exactly where the stable is. But this image has not been released ever to the public before, so this is the first time the world's going to get to see this map they drew, even though I believe it had the date 1976 somewhere on the file. I'm not sure if that's when it was made, absolutely, but it may have been that early. It could be from later. I'm not sure if that date's when it was from. But okay, so here is the map. What you see is the Sphinx over here, and from the right shoulder, basically, this tunnel coming down, going under the Sphinx temple and straight over to the Pyramid of Records that they're showing. So this is the cave cleanup area, and this is the stable, basically. When we lay it over, we literally see it is pinpointing the stable property, which are these trees right here. So this is unbelievable. This is something we did not see until just this past year. And this came out, after we talked about the stable in part two. But maybe you could mention again quick just what interested you about this area on the outside and inside of the wall, and why did you begin thinking that was the place?
Well, I've been following the education readings since the 1970s, and the is what led me to the stone stable area exactly, and I was able to purchase it. Americans could own the property there in Egypt, so I did buy the stable, and based on private research and some private GPR tests, and followed up by some temporary excavations, we were able to confirm what these drawing was saying.
When you did buy it, you cleaned it up a lot. You built like a kind of office there and you kind of fixed it up, and then that ended up getting destroyed when they were destroying the whole village too.
Yeah, when they started destroying all the other houses around it, they did knock down the upper portion, but even as of today that I'm talking, they have not disturbed the ground at all in that area, and they know why,
Hmm.
and we know why, and we're hoping maybe this year to be able to do something more about uncovering what is there.
Hmm. At this point, we're hoping they're going to do archaeological surveys of this entire area that's been demolished, and there's no risk to anything because there's no
Right.
monuments there. There's not even houses there at this point. So if there are tunnels under here that connect right into this area and towards the Sphinx, there's nothing to lose by searching for it.
Right.
So this one shows that there were some of these chambers, which actually this map you can see it even shows one of those chambers, this little square, which was pretty close to where you took a picture of this chamber with the three doors that shows these three little chambers with shafts going down in each one. And we knew from Salim Hassan's map of all of these chambers here, which are always locked. You can never go inside any of these ones, but we know that each one has a little shaft going straight down. So all in this area, you've got shafts going into a system that you feel very confident connects from underneath the wall as well as I do.
Right.
So this map basically confirms that the ARE was thinking the exact same thing as you, and um, it's not them saying that this is exactly what's there. Should make that clear. It's them suggesting how it could be laid out, but basically their idea of it was Hugh Lynn Casey, Edgar Casey's son, was working with Dr. Hawass and Mark Lehner, and they were learning a lot about it, and there were these excavations going on. So if this was actually the 70s, not much of that had been done yet, but some of it had actually been started. So it may be an educated guess, is what I'm saying, at least. And this image is overlapping the image that we had already put out the year before we even found this map. And this shows a few of the things, a lot of the anomalies that had already been the entrances on the Sphinx's body. Anomaly A under the left paw, which was pretty close. Dr. Abbas, his other scan in 2006, he showed these two areas where there's a tunnel in front of the Valley Temple here. This is where the red granite was discovered back in 1980. So it was pretty close. We also put out this image right here where I'd marked the Hall of Records area being somewhere around here. That one is pretty close to where they said the actual Pyramid of Records might be. So this map is absolutely incredible. I couldn't have imagined it would actually pinpoint the location of this stable so perfectly, even if it is just an estimate of where it could be. This is a article by Glenn Dash from 2004 where they did some more of the surveys over there. They actually surveyed a lot of these different areas. Mostly we're going to focus on this one, E right here. They scanned right in front of the Sphinx and found interesting things in these three locations here, basically. North-south tunnel, an east-west tunnel, and something interesting off the northwest corner of the Sphinx temple right here. This is showing how that corresponds to the tunnel coming up and in. It's just another reference. And this is a pretty useful illustration that came out with that one too. But so this was one of the most important readings that I didn't bring up yet, but he said where he was asked where the records are basically in relation to the Sphinx, and he says, in position it lies as the sun rises from the waters, the line of the shadow or light falls between the paws of the Sphinx that was later set as the sentinel or guard, and which may not be entered from the connecting chambers from the Sphinx's paw, right paw, until the time has been fulfilled when the changes must be active in the sphere of man's experience between then the Sphinx and the river. So, I actually had this video here where, yeah, if we look from right here, this is at sunrise at the Sphinx. And you can see, for one thing, this big square that was like built out in front of the right shoulder. This is where that entrance is. But you can also see, as I'm walking around it, the sun is rising to the northeast right here. Basically, it's rising right over the stable, just past that tree. So I just wanted to share that the line of sight of the sun is literally, it's right on top of the direction where the stable would be. Okay, so he's talking about the right shoulder specifically, which is not the left paw where Dr. Schock and John Anthony West and Thomas Dobecki found the chamber there, but the right paw instead of the left. In this picture, you can see now they have this whole thing constructed around it, which this is not roofed over, actually. It's just a wall, basically, but you can't see into it. So I just had a couple pictures of that to illustrate. That's all modern, kind of blocking it up. So this is basically the view on top of the tunnel. It would be cutting through the Sphinx temple here and over to the shoulder. No one ever really gets into the Sphinx temple or looks at it, even though it's got all this incredibly important geological evidence about, it's got these huge stones. It's some of the most impressive stonework. And we know it goes back to the time of the Sphinx because a lot of these stones were pulled right out from the Sphinx's body. They were quarried from that same stone. But what's really interesting that I want to show quick is where this tunnel would come forward and underneath. If they wanted to try and identify or find that tunnel exactly, they would potentially drill right in this zone, which is what they did. Right here, you can see there are these boreholes on the bottom of this area that's right next to the anomaly A, that chamber under the left paw. So I wanted to put a couple of these photos. There's a good one you can see. Those are literally right here where if they're trying to find the tunnel coming through, they would be drilling here to find it. So that's an indication they really did think that tunnel was there and that it was real. this is from Salim Hassan's excavations at Giza 1936 and 37, where he mentions that our efforts brought us to the discovery of a passage running north-south parallel to the temples and passing under the two paved routes of the Valley Temple. So I think he's potentially talking about this one, which may actually be the one that Dr. Abbas found in 2006. This was the other 2006 report he put out, just as you guys were doing the Sphinx Causeway as well. And in this one, he said that he saw these anomalies of like a subway, a passage with a roofed over tunnel, basically. Yeah, we also knew that they had pulled this stone from somewhere in this circle here. A red granite plug stone was removed from somewhere in this area in the dead of night, but we already covered this where we talked about this in part two. But there's another thing to do with the Sphinx Temple. And where they actually found this red granite underground was up here in front of the Sphinx in 1980 when they did the core drilling. They found red granite underneath underground, which is of course a sign that there's a constructed temple there because there's no actual granite in the bedrock of Giza. It's all limestone. But when we take a closer look at this one, we can see there's like a cliff, like a drop off underneath all the sand. There's an underground cliff and it drops very low down here. Here's another image where you can see that in front of the Sphinx Temple, a little ways in front, it drops way off, and this is all full of sand. So Lehner and Hawass have been talking about this, and this was one of the images they put out in the Aerogram, the Ancient Egypt Research Associates, led by Mark Lehner. They put out this image showing that the water used to come right up to the Sphinx, basically, in this harbor. And so this drop off or cliff may have been coming down into the water to let the water come in. That's one of the things they were thinking, at least. But here's another interview from 97 with Dr. Hawass where he mentions the drop off. The interviewer says that the bedrock out of the Sphinx was carved ends a short distance in front of the Sphinx, giving rise to the idea that there is a cliff or drop off. And he says, yes, we found a drop off and tunnels in the harbor area in front of the Valley Temple and Sphinx, but no Hall of Records. And these are a couple of slides. Maybe you could explain a little bit about what had happened back at this time. This was around 2010, I think, right around when you were buying the stable.
Yeah, that was when they were excavating, and it was the same time of when they found the shaft. It went straight down, and there was no water in the shaft, and then all of a sudden, they had this removed this red plug that I reported in 2010, and right after that, the water just started rising. It was kind of like they pulled the plug from the tunnel and filled the area. That was the speculation at the time.
Hmm. Yeah, they brought in all these sandbags and stuff. There was a drilling rig,
Mhm.
and this one's a good view because the Valley Temple's right here, and you can see these two ramps that come off of it. And looking straight up from there, you see the cave cleanup area, the big tree, and the
Right.
stable right
Yeah.
here. That's a
Yeah.
good shot.
Well, that's where the tunnel is.
Hmm.
I have more information on it that I'll come out in the near future about.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically looking up this tunnel here pretty much.
Mhm.
It seems like it might be a little further over,
Yeah,
but
it's a little bit farther west, in that area.
closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this one looks parallel to it at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this one does actually look close to where Dr. Abbas found it.
Right.
Um, these two. See, we were looking straight up through these two ramps, but
Right.
he found the subway a little off to the right. So I think what he found was the same as the Glendash information, probably this same tunnel here. All right, this is the most exciting part now. So yeah, we know that there was some like interesting projects going on at that time where this whole staging area was built up for this Red Bull event where they were doing some stuff, and I think the idea is a lot of people think they're doing a lot of this excavating down the side of that cliff face covertly, basically. They weren't telling too many people what was actually going on, but what they were doing was basically trying to dig down along the cliff face and get a view of what's going on down there and potentially figure out what's going on with this red granite and if there's anything connected there. So this is more the material we got from the ARE recently, and Laura ended up putting these in her presentation at the Ancient Mysteries Conference in 2024 and 2025. She released more of this, and that's what enabled us to be able to share it now. So the ARE has given us permission to release the following diagrams, which are super exciting. The elements shown in the following diagrams of the Sphinx area are not necessarily to scale. These diagrams showing underground monuments and passages are only conjecture as far as these features are concerned and are given to aid in conceptualizing possibilities as to how such passages and monuments might exist within present topography in the bedrock. Scale diagrams would more fully aid in determining what is feasible. Since the Casey readings frequently refer to the records as being in a buried pyramid, the main attempt has been to conceptualize this feature with a passage connecting to the Sphinx. The interior chambers of the conjectured pyramid are especially not to scale. The problem of the water table has been ignored in these diagrams. The line of cross-section does not necessarily correspond with the line of passages shown. So these are cross sections cutting straight through the Sphinx, but as they're saying, and as we saw on the other map, it could be bending off to one side or another. And this is the description of the first one that we're going to show. Figure 2, the cross section of the Sphinx area and conjectured passage system connect with a pyramid built against the subsurface ledge into the bedrock. Other possible elements are added. The Casey readings indicate in at least one instance that there could be burials within subsidiary pyramids along the way from the Sphinx to the Pyramid of Records. The northwest corner chamber is conceptualized after reading 195-14, which states that the data concerning the building of the Sphinx may be found in the vaults in the base of the Sphinx and in the corner facing Giza pyramid, hence northwest corner is what they're imagining he means. May be found wording of how this was formed. The storage chamber is after reading 1925-1, indicating great storehouses in those pyramids or mounds not yet uncovered. So this is the image that goes with that description, where you can see the Sphinx right here, this chamber coming down from the right paw, leading to the passage connecting over through bedrock tunnels to where this pyramid is set in front of the drop-off. So this is really amazing because they're showing that, well, the next one kind of shows it even better, but that if you put a pyramid into a pit so far under where the bedrock is, then it's automatically just going to get covered over by sand and buried, protected, preserved. So that's the idea, is that this thing would have done exactly what the Sphinx does. The Sphinx, since it's mostly subterranean, the sand fills it in, and that's what's preserved all this weathered bedrock in its courtyard. So that's one of the three views we have here. This next one, they say cross-section showing possibility of a pyramid built into a pit into bedrock off the front of the Sphinx area to be concealed. The pit, in this case, would have to be filled in, perhaps with blocks covering the fill. Roofing over an unfilled pit of this size would have been difficult and demanded the use of pillars or extremely large blocks. If this diagram were to scale, the blocks would have to have been as long as the Sphinx itself. So here they're saying it doesn't just continue going off at this low angle, but it's actually just a pit that was dug out to, again, where the sand would just fill it in, cover the pyramid, and you'd still be able to access it from the right paw. And then this third one just says cross-section showing the buried pyramid incorporated with the extant mound northeast of the Sphinx. The line of cross-section does not correspond with the line of the underground passage. So this is another version where they're basically showing it's closer up. You can see the Sphinx is bigger, and this is a bit closer to it. This is like where the village really starts, and this is under the mound, basically. I mean, well, this is basically the cave cleanup area, I guess. And this is basically right under the stable.
That's directly underneath the stable.
Yeah. So they're saying this could be bending off towards the north too, like the map we saw. So these three pictures, tell me what, how do you feel when I first showed you these images and showed you this overlay? Were you surprised or were you just
Well,
already
I
ready
wasn't
for it?
surprised, though it was confirmation for me. I
Yeah.
mean, it was kind of like what I've always understood, from day one, and that was before we even got these pictures. So, when they ARE released them and allowed them, I'm going like, yeah, well, finally, uh, what I've been saying all along, now we have more confirmation.
Yeah. So three of them, and I don't know why these have never been released before because it's incredible. And again, they were saying these are, just to help visualize the conception of how it could be connected. But I think I think they're very educated guesses. You know, I think it's harder to say north to south where it might be, but it would seem like it makes sense to say that, this passage connecting to this pyramid of records would be coming basically over to the west, if that's where we have this drop off, a place where a pyramid could be constructed underground and automatically buried. I think that's a technique they understood would help preserve it because
Yeah, exactly.
it's actually the same with the solar boat. Like they put that whole wooden boat under the pyramid there in that pit right next to it because they knew those pits would fill in with sand and it would be packed in and dry. And that's why we still have these boats, which are considered potentially some of the oldest organic artifacts on the planet because wood, would usually just deteriorate. So yeah, it would seem this would be a way to preserve a pyramid underground, basically. There's another image here that it says the plan of Sphinx area modified from the Salim Hassan excavations. Red line indicates the line of cross section in figure 4. Subsurface passage of the pyramid correspond to that in figure 4. In Rick's more carefully surveyed diagrams, the east-west axis of the Sphinx temple through the eastern and western wall recesses passes more to the south along the side of the right paw to the position of the blind chamber behind the paw. So it's talking about this image where the red line is not shown on this. This is a different scan, but this is one of the maps that was in the same diagram. And you can see here, for one thing, there's like an X marks a spot right off the northwest corner of the Sphinx temple here, like we saw before. They've also got this big star right on this mound, which is where we were saying there could have been another Sphinx. And this is exactly where the cave cleanup area is. So the stable would be right over here. But the line was shown like right about here going north to south because this has the west on the top in this view. All right, and then there was some of these photographs that were also in the same document, I believe. So large mound directly across the road and northeast of the Sphinx was dug. There was a tomb dating back to the time of Khufu, which was discovered. Both the hieroglyphs and the carvings indicated the burial of one of the men responsible for workmen on the Great Pyramid. This tomb has been robbed and used again in Roman times. So again, they're talking about this mound right here and the cave cleanup area. But these are some of the photographs from 1979 when they were digging this up. And that would have been Zahi with, I'm not sure if Mark Lehner was part of that at that time, but he was working with SRI, Stanford Research Institute, when they were digging all this up.
This is the exact same area as the 2011 cleanup that we did. And
Right.
what they covered up since the 1979, we uncovered in 2011 and found the same exact information.
Right. And surprisingly, those are the only two investigations I've ever seen of that area, which is surprising because it's so close. I mean, this is literally 100 meters from the Sphinx, if that, probably less, to where all these shafts are going straight down. So it's just I can't believe that no one besides SRI in the 70s and you in 2010 11 ever took any interest in this area. But it's certainly amazing for us to find this stuff at this point of, what they had found back then. They showed like this skeleton. Someone was buried right into the dirt. There was some hieroglyphs on this entrance in, which is probably how we determined this was from the time of Khufu. This is one of the entrances they showed. This picture's amazing. I mean, this is what you'll see, I think, in every single one of those many different chambers are these little doors and little shafts down in the floor from them. So basically every one, there's false doors in a lot of them. And this is the other last amazing photograph is where you actually see there's two figures inscribed. These are all over the plateau. It's just like half statues in relief, basically. So we've got a few of these photos showing that there is stuff underground right in that area and further entrances. This is all right underneath that mound and even burials that do go back to the time of Khufu. And this is another thing you were saying, or that your wife Lucina was talking about, that she thought some of these tombs that were right in that area might be very important and related to some of the people who were actually working on the pyramid, right?
Right, exactly. That's why we went in and did the cave cleanup.
Mhm. You were looking for Khufu or whoever the original pyramid builder could have been. Yeah. So, yeah, we've got all these photographs to add to the evidence pool now. And just a couple last things I want to touch on here. So, this is the other big announcement now is that we've got a foundation. We, we've got a charitable nonprofit 501c3 American foundation. This is basically me and you joined together to create basically a centralized funding channel for some of these projects to direct attention and funding towards some of the projects we want to accomplish here. And this is going to focus a lot on Giza. This is our website, and it's at archaeologicalrescue.org if you want to check it out. And so far, we've got a page up about Hawara, so you can see that one. But we're going to have a Giza project page up here pretty soon, and it's just going to be a very big page with a lot of subsections to it. So we're working on getting that out right now. But the logo is actually the Sphinx from the Dream Steel right in front of the Sphinx's paws, because that's going to be our main goal is to get in here. So these are just the last couple images. This is the Coffer Project's image where I overlaid these paths coming in from the east. These are two potential access to the Great Pyramid and one way that I think we can get to the Sphinx where it will connect behind the Sphinx to all three pyramids. So again, that evidence is in parts 5 and 6. I got into the evidence for all these tunnels, but we kind of prefaced that beforehand. But if we can do that, then potentially we can go straight down into this deeper stuff from underneath the pyramids and up underneath the Sphinx where they showed another cube. So, yeah, what do you think about all of that? And is there anything you can tell us about the future and what the next steps are, what we're working on right now with
Well,
this project?
it's nothing has gone publicly official, but we are working with a team and the Egyptians to work in the Giza area to do some new ground research. We're hoping to use our company, ARF, to help coordinate that with them, along with Lewis and his team in Hawara. So look to the ARF Foundation website, and you'll be able to see what's going on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's very exciting too. That we should mention that this page about Hawara, it's not just all the information that we already had about it, and all the things that we spoke about in part 1, where you worked there back in 2007 through 9, when Lewis was also working there with his expedition, and now we're all trying to help and support each other. But Lewis is taking the lead on this plan for Hawara, which he just let us actually release. So if you come to this page and click the master plan of action, you can see this new document that is so exciting because that plan seems to be going forward. And Lewis has listed the Grand Egyptian Museum, Cairo University, National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics, the NRIAG, who we were just saying did these scans in 2006 with Dr. Abbas. So Lewis's plan here is so exciting at Hawara, and it sounds to me like some of these same big universities and museums are interested in Giza as much as Hawara. So Hawara is kind of getting the green light more so than Giza because of funding that's already in place for that, and it sounds like that some aspects of the Hawara project are already starting actually. But it sounds like Giza's not far behind that. And they're going to, this was something we've been talking about. I've been saying the gem should be getting involved there. That's the museum where a lot of this stuff should end up, if anywhere, because it's right there at Giza. They spent $1 billion making this thing. Um, so yeah, I think we've been talking a lot about how it's really just a matter of this very sensitive area that's already been demolished. You have the Egyptian government trying to get these massive contracts with hotel developers to go through. So a lot of those people who just want money are saying, let's blow through these surveys and not really do a good job and just get our hotels up. And then there's people like you and I who are saying, no, we're gonna stop for a second. We're gonna show everyone enough of what's under there to where they're gonna have to just stop the show. And
Yeah.
and
Well,
yeah.
there has been an agreement with the Egyptian authorities that there will be no hotels built from the main roadway shown here on the far east. That's going to be the limit of the hotels.
That
And
could change
it goes all the way
everything.
down into Mark Lerner's village, workers village area also.
Yeah, which is more down here.
Right, exactly.
Um, I got to go through all their last trip. I've got some great footage from the Workers Village area and
Yeah.
Gibble Ghibli under the cemetery.
So
Um,
it's that far south, all the way over to the road that's shown on the right here. So that whole
mhm.
area is being researched over the next couple of years.
Yeah,
So Egyptians are doing a really good job to try and preserve, what's really there and keep the hotel businesses away from it.
hmm
That's the
Yeah.
master plan and agreement right now.
We need to do this survey completely and thoroughly and absolutely
Yeah.
show everything there, not just blow
Well,
through it and try
well,
to get these
well,
things
the
up.
plan has been set in place and still negotiating, but it requires a lot of money and donations from people. So if they can help the
Yeah.
Lewis's foundation and our foundation, then we can help support to get that work done.
Yeah. Yeah, because now it's not so much we're trying to set this project up from scratch and pay for it all ourselves, but it's we want to get a foot in the door with these groups that are looking like they're going to go ahead with it in some form or
Right.
another. And the more
Yeah.
funding we can get, the more of a say we can have, and the more transparency we can call for and kind of control over the situation, I think. Because it's going, they're doing such huge constructions, and this is like some of the idea of how, this is the newer entrance coming in from the west, which they're going to try and get everyone coming this way. And we know last year they tried to shut down the gate from the east where you come in from the village of Nuzla Saman, but that caused a whole uproar because that would actually kill this entire village. If the gate coming into the Sphinx over here was closed, all the guest houses, tourist businesses, family homes, they wouldn't be able to resist anymore. They wouldn't have any money. The whole
Well, that was
village would
the
be
idea.
dead. Yeah. So they
But
tried
there
to,
was a mini revolution that, that stopped that. So,
yeah. I mean, that was so bold of a move. It's like,
but the blue line has been stopped over at the Meeting
yeah,
House.
yeah.
They did stop that.
Yeah, so you can't come down from the Mina House anymore
Yeah,
for the moment, but they are going to have a northern entrance coming in from the gem,
yeah, yeah.
which they've built, I think. I'm not sure if it's actually open to be used yet, but There's this
Yeah.
walkway. I'm not sure. I mean, that would be a long walk from the gym, so I think it might have those electric buses shuttling people in from that way. But
Right.
anyway, it's just when you enter the plateau, you're supposed to come in through the Sphinx. I feel that's just the way it's supposed to be. There's nothing
Well,
like
it's
the
been for
Sphinx
20
Gate.
years.
Yeah. I mean, the Sphinx is what greets you to the plateau, I think. So,
Exactly.
yeah, threatening to close that gate would kill the entire village that we've spent so much time in and have so many good friends in. So, anyway, all right. Well, so we're basically just releasing some of this new stuff. These images, I think, are so incredible. I just freaked out when I saw these, and I want to thank Laura really so much for finding these in the archives. And I don't know why they've never been public, but now we've got them on the record. And basically, these things are showing us that you were absolutely dead on, Bill. I mean, the fact that we literally got these things last year. Um, Laura first showed it to me after we had already put out all of these videos saying exactly what we thought. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I could tell in my head before I even overlaid it on this satellite image that it was going to be X marks the spot on your stable. But
And I'm working privately and personally to try and make that happen over the next year or two.
Mhm.
That's what I'm working on, and that's why I'm hoping that we can ask the public to help support ARF through donations monthly to get that done because it's
Mhm.
going to take a lot of money.
Yeah, we are offering a membership too. If you want to pay $100 per year or $9 a month, then we might do a newsletter eventually, but that's not quite up and running yet. But we will have an annual meeting at least that you'll be invited to as members, and we're gonna should be really fun at the end of the year, be able to discuss some of the progress, and it's gonna be quite a year, 2026. So yeah, uh, like we've been saying, they should be doing GPR in this entire area where they've
Yeah.
already demolished it. And again,
Yeah.
here you can see the causeway coming. This is the section Mark Laner cleaned up in 2023, basically. But that's like the extension of the Great Pyramid Causeway that goes way out. So that's incredibly exciting because this is not the end of the plateau, you know. The plateau is much bigger. The village is on top of so much of it. We all know that. Awesome. So this
Okay.
is super
Thank you.
exciting, Bill. Like anything else you want to throw in here on top of this? You're
No,
heading back to Egypt soon?
just stay tuned and check with our website to we'll be updating that daily starting in April.
Awesome. All right. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate this information. We'll get some more ads soon.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So I just want to add a couple last points here quick because in reviewing this interview, I think there might be a couple points that will receive some critiques and comments. So I'd like to clear up a couple last things here. In Lehner's 1991 thesis called The Archaeology of an Image, he did put a section in about this large box on the south side, which he says was first exposed by Auguste Mariette in 1853. And he describes the box a little bit. You can take screenshots of these few pages if you want to read the whole thing. He's describing a few details about what it looks like or what it looked like in 1925 when Berets found it. Berets was the guy who actually put a lot of cement on the Sphinx. He cemented up the patch on the top of the head. He cemented up the entrance right behind the dream stele. Both of these now just have a metal hatch on them, but they've got cement all around that. So Berets was also working there in the 20s, and he's describing what it looked like in his time. It was mostly intact. There had been a big hole forced through the phase one masonry, though, so someone had opened up part of the body behind it, perhaps thinking there was something there in an earlier time. He also says that Berets ripped away the ends of the east and west walls of the box where they joined the body of the Sphinx. So where it connected to the Sphinx's body, he pulled all those stones out so he could finish repairing the masonry there, and then he put stones back in afterwards. So there are a few points where he actually mentions mortar, which to me says modern, someone doing something in modern times, either trying to repair or cover something up. But the ancient Egyptians almost never used mortars. So here on page 263, we get some really good stuff. In 1977, a team from the radiophysics laboratory of SRI International at Stanford Research Institute used resistivity sensing on the rock floor around the Sphinx and detected an anomaly typical of the behavior expected from a vertical shaft immediately beside the south large box. The team returned the following year for a thorough resistivity survey of the Sphinx floor, this time also recording acoustical measurements of any detected anomalies. They could not confirm the indications of a shaft beside the box. However, an advanced acoustical probe used only at the end of the project indicated that one significant blind spot lies beneath the cupola, the south large box, alongside the Sphinx on the south side. So this is very interesting. They did find what looked like a vertical shaft right next to it. So this might answer some of the questions about why this hole was carved into it anyways, why there was this mortar inside it and things like that. But the next paragraph as well says, although the SRI team did not drill the anomalous area under the south large box, on May 9th, 1978, the upper two of the 5 large stones at the bottom of the box were moved under the supervision of the author and Zahi Hawass, chief inspector of the Giza pyramids. The material that filled the space between these blocks and the smaller packing blocks of the wall adhered to the wall after the removal of the blocks. The fill consisted of a mixture of sand and soft pink crumbly mortar over a sloping thin layer of gray mud or clay, which in turn rested on a layer of soft sand and limestone fragments. We lifted the large blocks of the lower course, revealing only the bedrock floor underneath. So again, we have mortar that they found. When they actually investigated into whether or not there could be a shaft under there, under Zahi's authority, they found mortar down there, which again tells me this could have been something more modern. Lehner is coming to the general conclusion here that this square enclosure was actually an ancient part of the structure, that it was from ancient times and not built in recent times. Marriott had concluded that this large box was once the base of a colossal statue of Osiris, the pieces of which he found inside the hole in the Sphinx. So they had found what looked like a part of the torso and a couple pieces of this broken statue he imagined was once standing right there on the south side of the Sphinx on that platform. So the last interesting note from Lehner's account is that he says that this statue of Osiris is actually missing, built-in pieces, according to Marriott. He said that there were 2 shaped pieces at least, one of which could be a torso found in the gap between the Sphinx body masonry inside the large south box. Several of the photographs show in addition a limestone double crown and face that must have been found near to the south large box. These pieces sat for some time near the south forepaw. The head or face piece is obscured in these views, though it can be seen in part 1, 2.4. The features of the face are worn badly. During my work at the Sphinx, the pieces sat on the floor in the southeast corner of the Sphinx sanctuary at the base of the Khafra Causeway. Their surfaces have worn considerably since 1925, when berets found them. They are barely recognizable as a double crown and a face. A third piece at this location may represent the knee and shin of a statue. In chapters 8 and 9, I discuss the form, dimensions, and original context of these pieces. So this Osiris statue, this is very interesting. Could it be a clue that indicates a connection from this vertical shaft next to the south box, leading all the way to the Osiris shaft? Very well could be. I think if this tunnel system connects over to the Pyramid of Records, it also connects into the main hall under the Sphinx's body, which I've shown elsewhere to be connected to the west over to the Osiris shaft and to all 3 pyramids. So I think this shaft going down has a very good chance of connecting into all of that. And this Osiris statue could be an association that's meant to be a clue indicating that. It's possible, at least. So I'm going to explain a lot more about the tunnels in the Osiris shaft that may connect to all this stuff in my next film. It'll be coming out very soon. And I'm going to show a detailed documentation of the entire length of the mud tunnel on the third level of the Osiris shaft, and I'll also explain the tunnel that Dr. Thomas Dobecki discovered 9 feet underneath where the sarcophagus lid was found. And this tunnel, he said, ran all the way directly to the Sphinx. So I'll mention more of that in my next film. So this gives us a bit more information about the South Large Box, as they call it, and what was found there originally. I don't always trust Lehner. You know, this is useful information, but I think he and Zahi are both covering up a lot of what they had found at that time. So I take it with a grain of salt, but I think this is really useful what he says here, especially considering he does say they found what looked exactly like a vertical shaft going down right there. So obviously, this is what they were both looking at. Based on this idea, working with Hewlett and Casey, looking at the Casey readings, they understood, he said, through the right paw. That's why they were looking at this stuff. And it seems they did find that there was a shaft there, like they basically portrayed in these diagrams that were left in the Casey archives. So there is a shaft under the right shoulder, it would seem, and no one has ever gotten into it or actually admitted that they've gotten into it at least. But we know that if they did, they probably wouldn't say so. So it's hard to say, but this gives us a little more context. The only other thing I think people will really have a problem here is a kind of obvious contradiction that the Casey Foundation basically just said they ignored, which is the water table. There have been pretty few real thorough examinations of the water table at Giza. There's one paper that gets into it pretty substantially, but even still, I don't consider that a valid challenge to this theory or this proposition of the layout of this pyramid, because bottom line, the Egyptians were genius engineers and they could move water very efficiently. They could put it anywhere they wanted it and they could keep it away from anywhere they wanted it. Seeing some of these structures that Filippo has shown us with the SAR scans, we know that they could create drains that go down half a mile into the earth into some larger cavities. You know, there are even stories about underground tributaries of the Nile. And so potentially they could have diverted water into spaces that are automatically cleared out. So I don't think it's a valid challenge to this hypothesis. The Egyptians have proven many times that they can actually build megalithic constructions over 20 meters below the water table, in the example of the Assyrian, for instance. So it's not a valid challenge to this. It doesn't mean that this couldn't exist. It is a complication, perhaps, but they could have made it work either way. They could have put drains in the corners of this pit. Another alternative is perhaps these records were actually stored in a waterproof form, so they wouldn't have cared if it flooded. Maybe that would be even more protection for it, that it would remain underwater until it could be drained and found. That's another potential. So I would argue overall that based on a true appreciation of the genius engineering skills of the Egyptians, the water table is simply not an issue. They could have managed a way to create this. So that's all I wanted to add in here. I hope you enjoyed this interview. I hope you enjoy the new evidence we've brought forward, and leave your comments below. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.